Well, hey everybody, and hello to Jen Gerson, who, by the way, Jen, we were trying to figure out how long it had been, but we saw each other in person for the
Yes.
first time in about 6 or 7 years this week.
7. I think it was 7.
Yeah, and for the record, you are taller than I remembered.
Yes. Well, that I did not get any taller from the last time you saw me. However, I would say, so I went to a gala event and I got my hair done because I don't know how to do my own hair. And because I spent $100 getting my hair done, I have now refused to take it out for 3 days. It's now a messy bun, but I'm keeping it in principle.
You mentioned that earlier, that you spent $100 on your hair. I spend $12 on my hair every 2 weeks.
But you have to do it every 2 weeks, where I only spend like $100 once or twice a year. There you go.
What other hair care do you have to do the rest of the time?
Well, I mean, you have to cut it.
How often do you? I mean, I remember saying to you a few videos ago, your hair was getting very, very long.
I mean, I do cut it once or twice a year.
Okay. Well, okay. We've covered all the hair care segment of the chat. So I have something that's pissing me off, and I want to talk about it, but I kind of feel like, no, here's the thing. I think we should talk about Alberta first.
All right. I just wrote a column and that you liked it so much that you called me to tell me how much you liked it after you read it. So
I'm emotionally supportive.
You are emotionally supportive, but that made me very happy and pleased because, again, I wrote that column mostly on a plane ride after being sort of hungover. But anyway, yeah, so I'm not sure I do think we should say something about the situation in Alberta for the Dispatch. I got 2 kind of little blurby things that I didn't really include in the column because the column was already a little over long. And that is, there's been a lot of bad takes as a result of Kenney's collapse, self-destruction, and all of them are kind of self-interested. Or what they are is they're people who are projecting their own issues about conservatism writ large onto Kenney's demise. Whereas I think that, Kenney's failure for the most part can really be summed up with the failure of leadership and interpersonal issues. Like 99 times out of 100, when a leader goes down in Alberta, and there've been 99 times and 100, it really does come down to, high school level, this person was mean. And I didn't like it, and it didn't go over well with caucus, and caucus got angry, and the person wasn't responsive, and it really comes to almost HR issues. It is a thing most of the time. So if you're trying to inject some kind of broader narrative about conservatism or ideology into it, there's probably a part of it that's a factor in all of this. But I think personality is a lot more often the deciding factor. So there's that. And then there's the other thing where there are people like me and Ken Buskell's also tried to make this point, but who've tried to argue for years and years and years that Alberta is not an ideologically conservative province. It's sort of tribal conservative affiliation is really just an accident of history and geography. And bluntly, it's if anything, it's a populist province. It's an anti-elite kind of fuck central Canada. If the main leaders of Canada had traditionally been conservatives, Alberta would be
raging liberals.
Yeah, we'd be raging progressives and raging leftists. It just didn't pan out that way. But whenever you try to explain that to partisans or make that argument to partisans, they look at you like you've got 2 heads. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, of course, the homeland is true blue conservative, and as a result, you just sort of consistently see them miscalculate and misstrategize. You know what I mean? Like they're constantly operating under the assumption. I mean, the whole assumption under which Kenney united the right was, if I unite the right,
we're going to win.
We'll win because Alberta is a conservative province.
And the only reason we lost is because
we split the vote. And I'm like, yeah, there was some numerical strategy involved in that. But if you think that the UCP stands a pretty good chance of losing to Rachel Notley next year, you probably are going to lose. And so it's just because they have this sort of baked in assumption about who Albertans are and what Alberta is, they very consistently come into this province with the wrong strategic assessment of the problems, and they make bad decisions. The third issue that I would point out is a lot of Albertan conservatives are incredibly arrogant about their political skills. they think that, because they've won 70-80% in Southeast Calgary, that they are political geniuses. And I'm like, you're not. And very frequently, what you would actually find is that just the ground game and organization of a lot of conservative parties in Alberta is very weak, like very astonishing weak. Like they can't do very basic organizational work that is very commonplace in other parts of the country. But because you've been able to put CPC on a house plant, and that person would get elected, they tend to get elected. But again, this is accident of history and geography. It's not indicative of your personal political prowess and genius. So as a result, you have people like Jason Kenney, but there are lots of other MPs and frankly MLAs who just have massively inflated concepts of their own political abilities.
See, I normally stay at Alberta politics. I find it fascinating. And I think for a Laurentian elitist, I'm pretty well versed in Alberta politics because I do find it interesting. So I know some of the players. I have okay relationships with some of the principals, but I don't pretend to be the expert in this, right? Especially at this operation. I have you. I don't need to try and be an expert about this. Like I've got someone there. I'll make a couple of observations though that relate to what you say. So here's the view from Toronto, which is I know what everybody in Alberta needs right now. What you just said is something I've said before. I've said it a little more bluntly. Alberta's political culture is anti-Laurentian. Yes. So if there was a big political transformation in Quebec, in Ontario, you guys would have an identity crisis. Like there would have to be this whole weird thing. And and
also numerically, there are lots of people who will vote NDP provincially and conservative federally. There's a statistically significant number of people who do that.
And speaking of numerics, one of the things I find, and you've made this point before, and I'm going to agree with it, but I'm going to make it differently. A point you've made before is how Alberta's politics have become kind of stultified. Like it's a small, incestuous little group of high schoolers who have never gotten over their petty grievances, which by the way, Ontario, like we have our own dynamic version of that. Like I'm not pretending otherwise, but one of the things I just find interesting is how outsized Albertans think that Alberta is. And what I mean by that, I don't mean this dismissively, because I know, like, again, the view from Toronto is probably going to get me in trouble here. But I remember having this discussion once with, I'll tell you who it was off the air. You will laugh. But I was discussing with a very famous Albertan, a household name, and they were angry about the fact that Ontario elected so many more people than Alberta. And it was like unfair. It was this conspiracy against Alberta. And I'm like, well, it's because more people live here. And they were like, okay, come on, but like how many more people? And
lots
I'm like,
more.
Well, I said, you could fit basically double Alberta's population into the greater Toronto area. Like, yes. I'm overestimating Toronto's population like a little bit, but only by a couple 100,000.
Not
people.
A lot.
Like take Alberta's population and double it. And you would beat the greater Toronto area by a couple 100,000 people. Yeah. And this person was like they had just become so absorbed in the Alberta political battles that when they were reminded that the entire province, just in terms of population, I'm not talking GDP or economic power, or even cultural power, because Alberta is important in the federation in its role and its outsized importance. And I agree with that, even from Toronto. But just in terms of human beings who vote,
small.
It was Toronto is this awful little thing. A lot of us live here though. Like, like you have just within the city of the 416 itself 2/3 of the province of Alberta's population. So
and the other thing too is that this is, you really get the sense of this when Albertans or Albertan officials travel to the United States and think that they're going to be the big shots in the United States and nobody knows who they are, nobody cares. Like
northern
Alberta
Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly. Alberta is northern Wisconsin. Like we're very small. We're a very small population of people, and we punch above our weight in terms of cultural influence and economics and all that
political
sort of thing.
Influence too. Yeah,
and political influence, no question. But we're just a tiny province. We're a tiny subnational entity. Like we're not that big. And again, this is where you get one of the other problems that I constantly see with Albertans is the parochialism. Right? There's just no concept of how big the rest of North America really is and how small players we actually are in it. And this is where you get a lot of the separatist sentiment. We'll just start our own state. And we're like, okay.
Okay, Independent Republic of North Wisconsin.
Yeah. Okay, good luck with that. Like, it's just, we just don't have the sheer population density or mass to be the players that we think we are in our own heads. And
it's worse than that. It's actually worse. I agree. And again, here's the view from Toronto, which is probably going to piss some of our Albertan friends off. And for what it's worth, politically, I actually do have a streak of Alberta in me. Like, one of the reasons I'm a bit of like why I do have pretty good relationships with some of the principals in Alberta is because for a Torontonian, I've got a streak of Alberta in me, just in my politics and my worldview.
Yes.
The problem Alberta has, and this is again me being unhelpfully Torontonian when I say this, is that the one thing that has allowed you to have disproportionate outsized impact is less and less valuable. Like, you've got, I think oil is going to be more important longer than a lot of the environmentalists think.
We got 20 to 30 years.
Oh, I would not be shocked if it's 40 or 50. Like, okay. I think you guys have a longer runway than a lot of people would think. But that runway ends in, if it's 20 years or if it's 50 years, it ends in the same place. And then you guys have that long to figure out how you're going to be the best northern Wisconsin you can be. Because when energy either runs out or stops being as useful as it is now, you guys are 5 million people living in the prairies.
Now, in 50 years, you wouldn't be surprised to see if we were closer to 7, even 10 at the rate of growth we're at. So, like,
yeah, but I'll be 30 by then.
Yeah, yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. So anyway, what here is blurbable? What would you like to hear me blurb?
You rejected some of the takes. Now, I'm not asking you to throw our fellow scribes under the bus, but what are some of the takes you didn't buy?
So I mean, the general take that the problem was that how should I say this? And I make this point in the column that just came out today, but I do think that there's a sense that Central Canadians are getting very concerned about the rise of populism generally. And so they're kind of projecting their fear of populism onto what happened to Kenney. If only the populist COVID idiots or the idea that Kenney was ousted by ideological purists and things like that.
Are you subtweeting Sean Spear here?
A little bit, and Carson Jeroma and like that sort of thing.
Well, Carson's in Edmonton.
No, that's fair. That's true. That's fair.
Carson
I forgot that. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's right now that he succeeded me as comment section editor at the Post, but he's based in Edmonton.
That's fair. I forgot all about that. But anyway, yeah, I'm subtweeting, and I like Sean Spear a lot. I like Carson a lot. I don't mean to be trashing them. And there are other examples of people who have used this to assert their own narrative, like, the conservatives are out of control, woohoo, and this great respectable Kenney conservative was demolished by the populist wave, and going like, no, he it's not to say that there's none of that, or that there wasn't sort of a restive element that was probably never going to be happy in a highly restrictive COVID environment, yes, but there were compounding leadership failures that led up to this. And if Kenney were a stronger, more potent leader, he would have been able to handle that rest of caucus pretty easily, bluntly.
See, I find here I'm going to give you your third blast of view from Toronto. And I had told Tyler Dawson, a mutual buddy of ours, he is Alberta correspondent for the National Post. I think he succeeded you in that role. In fact, he's in Edmonton too. He was on my radio show Friday morning. We were talking with him about this, where I said, I became politically aware of Jason Kenney as a political columnist when I was at the National Post at the time. And he, like, I knew him as one of Harper's better ministers, right? Like, that was sort of like, I didn't know all of his Alberta background or some of the original stuff he'd been doing. He was just the guy that Harper trusted to send to the really tough ministerial job. So he did ethnic community outreach for years, particularly in the 905. He was Minister of National Defense. I think after Peter MacKay took that unfortunate helicopter ride, like, he went in to sort of be like, wow, defense is a problem. We'd better put one of our best guys on there. When Kenney left Ottawa, went back to Alberta, united the parties, won a huge majority, I thought to myself, we had a rising star in Canadian conservatism. You, for years, have been telling me, And I just think, like, you had an interesting local perspective. So you and I are actually probably perfectly encapsulating that difference.
Yes.
Where the Easterners who knew him for his federal service and the Albertans who saw him in action locally came to very different conclusions. Because I think based on his federal service, he looked like one of the smarter, more competent, more deft conservatives out there.
And yet
you were wary of him, not in a negative. Sorry,
no. I like Kenney just fine.
Yeah, and I don't want to suggest otherwise, but you had skepticism.
But my skepticism was rooted in a couple of things, and some of my skepticism proved to be totally unfounded. Like I thought he underestimated just how deep the split between the Wild Rose and the PC actually were, and what it was actually going to take to unify this party sort of heart and soul. I think you could do it technically, but like you weren't going to heal what had been at that point like a decade of really nasty fractious fighting, very bitter fighting. So there was that problem. He didn't really win over the Red Tories. The Red Tories basically just left. Like they just left and never came back.
Yeah.
And a lot of even the Wild Rose people just left and never came back. I got skeptical when I saw the way that he had handled some of his the leadership campaign. A
lot of allegations of impropriety.
A lot of allegations around kamikaze candidates and membership stuff. So that was like, okay, so this person is not playing on the up and up.
Allegedly.
And then my major issues, and I was very unpopular for saying this at the time, was that he's running a campaign against the NDP that makes the NDP a scapegoat for all of Alberta's problems, which will win him the election, no question. But then what? What was he going to do when he kicked the evil socialists out and he had to fix all of these broad macroeconomic problems? And like, to me, it was so interesting that he was running on Reform 1998 platform. There was nothing original. He had nothing new to bring to the table. Like his actual UCP platform was almost word for word out of Reform 1998. There was not a single goddamn new idea in that thing. And a lot of these ideas had already been tried. Like he was going to hold the fair deal panel. The fair deal panel shit had been done by Ralph Klein in the 2000s. Like it was all just a really, really regressive ash. And all of it just felt like some kind of nostalgic, I'm going to come in the blue truck and bring 1999 back. And like going like, my dude, like, firstly, Alberta's not that anymore. You've been gone here for too long. You still think, oh, this is the Alberta of 1999, and it isn't. This is a demographically different place, and it's a much more politically complicated place than all of that.
And you're also 20 years closer to the end of your main asset.
Yeah, exactly. And we're 20 years closer to the end of the main asset. So running against them evil environmentalists, we're just out to get us. We're going to repeal the carbon tax. We're going to start a war room. Yeah. Like, yeah, absolutely. The socialist fault that we're in economic decline. We're going to get the socialists out and cut the corporate taxes. Yeah. Like this was like, it was dude bro level politics. It was dude bro level late 90s politics. And there was absolutely a section of the conservative movement in Alberta that was like, yeah, that sounds really appealing, because they bought it. They bought into it because it was wishful goddamn thinking. That's what it was. And then within, like, honestly, 6 to 8 months of him being reelected, it just became really obvious that all of these ideas were stupid as all fucking hell. And they weren't working, because guess what? The price of oil was not Rachel Notley's fault. And like, whatever mistakes Rachel Notley made during her tenure, and she made a few, I think. Everybody would. But like, just putting a non-socialist at the helm was not going to fix these problems. Reducing an already low corporate tax rate didn't bring head offices back. Like the war room was a weird embarrassment that got staffed by an old PC backroom boy who couldn't win a nomination in Calgary Buffalo, and he was squandering millions of dollars on trying to relive his glory days by creating some kind of weird pro oil and gas like newspaper. It was bizarre, and I was looking at that at the time going like, you use that money and just hire a PR firm or a GR firm internationally and do this sort of stuff. Like it was just, the referendum. How many years have we, like, the stupid equalization? How many people explain like, no, you can have a referendum, but you can't get rid of it doesn't work like that. Still held it, still passed, and guess what? Nothing's come of it. All of his belligerence towards Trudeau. What was the good of all of that? What results did it achieve? $1.3 billion of taxpayer backing for the Keystone XL pipeline that's subsequently canceled by the Biden administration. And then the $1.3 billion is gone. And that's before we get to COVID. It was like a cascading series of failures. So when I hear like a bunch of people who I like Sean Spearson, oh, well, he was a great conservative premier who just got, taken out by these crazy anti-COVID. Like, no, that's not what happened. That is not what happened. And that's before we get into the issues around like the allegations, the fact that he was running a toxic work environment. That's before we get into the issues where like his caucus was all pissed off at him because like he was lecturing at them and not listening to them when they were like pointing out stuff to him. That's before we get into like the weird allegations where he was drinking in the middle of COVID. Like it's just, no, the problem was not that Jason Kenney was not ideologically pure enough. That was not the problem.
Like I said, guy from Toronto, you have the much better vantage point, but I will tell you, like I've repeated a few times, I have reasonably good connections in Alberta, and I was hearing a lot of this stuff from 2,500 kilometers away.
Yeah.
So if they there's not always fire where there's smoke, but if I can see the smoke from like 2 time zones away, there might be a fire worth looking at. Okay, you know what, we can move on after this, but I think this is really good. The one thing,
what am I writing for the blurb? Should my blurb just be like
that? I mean, I know that
Kenny's brought out a bunch of hot takes, and like we like a lot of the hot takers, but we think they're just misassessing the situation.
Yeah, and I do think there is something to the idea that the conservative movement right now is becoming ungovernable. I actually think that probably is true.
Probably is true, yes.
But that doesn't mean Kenney gave it the old college try. Yeah. Like, I don't think he put in the best possible effort and failed. And we go, oh, darn, those darn COVIDiot populists, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They doomed the otherwise noble effort. No, for all the reasons you said, Kenney probably had the deck stacked against him by circumstances.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he played the hand well.
No, and the other problem is like even with the leadership review, it was so interesting to me. It's like, well, it was the lunatics and anti-COVID people who voted against us. Yeah, but you were unable to mobilize any kind of organizational support in your own favor. Why?
Was he unable, or he didn't see the point? Because I know a couple.
He was unable. He was not able.
So he was trying.
No, as far as I know, no one in his caucus lifted a finger to help him. None of the original traditional UCP organizational doyens stepped up. They all just went,
Well, there were also reports in recent days of powerful non-political figures telling him it's over, man. Like, kind of like he had no one in his corner.
He had no one in his corner by the end. But the other interesting thing in all of this is that he apparently, even a few days ago, was going around telling people that he had it in the bag. He had 60 to 75%.
I know.
I mean, I knew he didn't have 75%.
Yeah.
Like you're delusional. You're completely out of touch. Somebody is not telling you what the hell is going on if you thought that was going to happen for you.
Yeah. One other thought that occurs to me, we'll move on after this, is that I wonder if in some ways Alberta conservatives suffer from the same affliction as Canadian liberals. And I mean that in the federal level, which is that their entire self-identification is the ruling party. And when they are not in office, it blows their minds. And it also, I think, often prevents federal liberals, or arguably Alberta conservatives under whatever banner, from having a realistic threat assessment of the political forces against them, right? Because of what you were saying before about how, the only reason the NDP could possibly win is because we split the vote. It couldn't be because people voted for them. Like it couldn't be because people chose them. Or it couldn't be
because we screwed the pooch so intensely after 40 years of one party rule that we deserved to be thrown out.
And I was tweeting about this a few days ago. Maybe I should have saved it for a column, but I can see a similar dynamic unfolding right now among federal liberals, which is, first of all, and this is I don't want to derail this, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. I am picking up signs of growing alarm among federal liberals. They're kind of going, we're in trouble. Like the political circumstances the liberals are in right now, this is not the terrain they want to be fighting on. Like they are not built to fight in an environment where it's like plague, literal war, inflation, and economic problems. They're the good news, happy, sunny ways party. That's how they've kind of formed themselves. They're not the tough decisions in hard times party. Even getting through COVID, tough times, they were the good news guys. We got vaccines. We've got CERB checks. We're all in this together. When it comes to actually making the tough decisions, a guy like Polyev is going to eat them alive. And I think, you know, and the reason I bring this up in the context of Kenney is that a lot of the liberals I'm talking to right now, they want to talk about misinformation or disinformation. They want to talk about Facebook and YouTube and Google. They want to talk about Fox News and Post Media and the evil right-wing guys in the same way that Kenney would have wanted to talk about the socialists and the environmentalists. But what I was saying a few days ago is to my liberal friends, you're actually just not doing that great a job. Like, you're doing an okay job on some files. You're maybe even, we could probably pick a couple files you're doing a good job on. There's a whole bunch of files you're just shitting the bed. And every time you do that, particularly when it's one of these just huge duds that's going to be a populist fire lit under the Canadian population, like you were flying this week, and we were talking when you were in Toronto. We had lunch about how the
airports are a disaster.
Yeah. So
yes.
So a guy like Polyev is going to weaponize that against you. And, you know, the liberals out there, I know, and I know and love many good liberals, they can be angry about Fox News and Post Media and disinfo and misinfo until the cows come home.
Yeah, but
there's some
petty.
truth to that.
But it's petty. And like the more attention you are spending on
clean your own,
Fox News is bad.
Just clean your own house up.
My dudes, inflation's running through the roof and you can't run an airport. Like let's focus on it's almost like it's the lack of ability to prioritize.
I think in the same context as in Alberta, the problem is you don't fix problems until you run out of excuses. So right now, I'm looking at some polling. I don't know if you saw this a few days ago. We're already getting off track. Damn it. I promised myself I wouldn't do this. You were probably in transit flying back to Calgary when this happened, but there's a new poll out. Ecos, I think, looking at voter intention federally by age group, and the Conservatives are winning 18 to 29, and it's not even close. And all the big brains are going, oh my goodness, what could be happening here? You idiots.
Well, and the other thing that I think now, I don't read one poll is one poll, what's one poll, but one thing we have now consistently seen, consistently seen with this is that liberal voters are old. Liberal voters are not able, or they are, and that is an advantage in the short term for liberal voters because old people vote.
Because old people show up. Yeah.
But then they die. That's the problem. So the Liberal Party is definitely the party of like the old boomer establishment. It's not
the old homeowner boomer.
Homeowner boomer establishment. And you know, there's a lot of young people in this country who I think are very rightly understanding themselves to be very politically disenfranchised and who are not going to go to the liberals, if they're left or right. So like there's a divide, there's a radicalization, I think, of people who are young and them going both to the left, and you also see an increase in sort of their support in the NDP caucus as well. And so I think that we are moving more and more toward a two-party system. And we will see that trend play out over the next 30 to 40 years.
I think mainly what we're seeing right now, though, is I think the liberals are in strategic trouble. I'm not writing them off. They're very good politicians. Never underestimate the liberals. They're the best at politics in this country. Like, and just in terms of their like political, tactical abilities, the liberals are the best. But the headwinds are against them. They are not fighting on their preferred terrain. And instead of kind of going, wow, maybe we should be better and do a better job at getting airports working as a perfect, excellent example, they want to talk about how Facebook has radicalized people and Pierre Poilievre is exploiting that. You know what? I don't make any excuses for the Conservative Party right now. It's flirting with a lot of dark, unpleasant shit, and I think it's bad, but the liberals aren't putting their best foot forward. And they can blame Facebook, or they can try to do a better job at, not having the country suck in some ways. All right. Speaking of which, segue. Monkeypox.
All right. That's a cheerful topic. Let's go.
Yeah. So I am not panicked about monkeypox, and I don't want any of the listeners to think I'm panicked about monkeypox. So there's an outbreak globally right now of monkeypox, which is a derivative of smallpox, which is freaking nasty. You and I are not vaccinated for smallpox. Canadians born before 1972 are. In some provinces, it would be later, but widespread vaccination for smallpox ended decades ago, before we were born. So we have an unvaccinated population. Here's why I'm not worried about monkeypox right now.
Okay.
Monkeypox is very lethal. It's a nasty virus, but it's not easily transmitted. And there's an outbreak globally right now popping up in countries all over the place, including the United States, Canada, and some European countries. There are two possible explanations for this. One, this is something related to a high contact event where someone, like for circumstantial reasons, there was an opportunity for someone who had become infected with monkeypox to infect a series of other people who have then infected a series of other people. I am very mindful of the stigma that AIDS took on the gay community, and I don't want to head down that dark path. But some of the evidence we're seeing now seems to be linking at least the North American outbreak to to gay groups in Eastern North America, where there might have been an infected individual in close contact to others who infected others. I know the historical legacy of this stuff, and I don't want to head down that
doesn't
dark
mean
path.
it any less. That doesn't make it any less horrific, but it does mean that we have to be a little bit more grounded in assessing the risk to the general population. That's
correct. And also, we also have to make sure to get the word out to anyone who may have been at a potentially high risk event to be cautious. So without wanting to stigmatize anyone, the evidence we have now, which could change, I can only underline how preliminary this is. This looks like bad luck. This looks like an individual who was accidentally infected, probably was not aware they're infected, happened to be an environment where there was high contact with a large number of other people, and the virus is able to transmit that way. The other possibility, though, and it's the smaller possibility, is that for some reason this thing has become more transmissible, that it is mutated in a way that has made it more transmissible. We'll know in a couple of weeks. Like, if we can smother this thing and keep it contained in these relatively small outbreaks, bullet dodged. If it starts popping up and the only contact is you might have ridden on the same bus as someone, then we're in a March 2020 situation all over again.
Yeah, but
we're
let's
not.
also remember that the other thing too is that we've now become so hyper aware of viral outbreaks. Like these sorts of little viral outbreaks used to happen all the time, and nobody paid attention to them. Like Ebola used to pop up every now and again, and people still does, smallpox or whatever. Not smallpox, obviously, for obvious reasons. That was a dumb thing to say. But we used to have little mini outbreaks of various sort of nasty illnesses, things like that. Yeah, all the time, and we were not particularly well attuned to them. COVID's made us hyper tuned to minor outbreaks. So this is a low probability sort of concern at this point, and we shouldn't be worried about it. And bluntly, if it hadn't been for COVID, we probably wouldn't even be talking about it right now.
Okay, I know you're trying to talk everybody down from the brink here, but the point I'm making is actually different. So,
sorry.
We have a vaccine already.
Good.
It's not like March 2020. The smallpox vaccine that we have no longer used, in regular use, is very effective against this. So what I wanted to do, and tell me this is not a friggin' Canadian story here. I emailed the federal government. I said, what is the status of our smallpox stockpile? They got right back to me and said, we're not going to tell you.
Oh, that's reasonable. Sure.
And
great.
They basically said, dear Matt, it was the two paragraphs of boilerplate. We are committed to the public health of Canadians, blah, blah, blah. And then let me see, give me 1 second here. This is going to make for scintillating audio on the podcast and video. But I want to actually tell you, I'm going to read for you exactly.
Read exactly what this country does to journalists. Let people understand. Let people understand our pain.
Okay, dear Matt. So they repeated the question. I'm going to read my question verbatim. Okay.
Okay.
What is the status of Canada's stockpile of smallpox vaccine? How many doses? I've seen recent reports of additions to the stockpile, but not what the status of the stockpile actually is. Do we have hundreds of thousands, millions, enough for everybody, etc.? And then, thank you, best regards, blah, blah, blah. This is the response I get back. The Public Health Agency of Canada's National Emergency Strategic Stockpile manages and allocates supplies that provinces and territories can request in emergencies that when their own resources are insufficient, such as during infectious disease outbreaks, natural disasters, and other public health events. The purpose of NES, which is the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile, is to provide surge support to provinces and territories. It is not intended to replace supplies that provinces and territories hold or procure. With public health being a shared responsibility, provinces and territories are also responsible for preparing and maintaining their own supply and stockpiling capabilities. As the NES has modernized, the stockpile has focused on stockpiling strategic medical supplies that are typically not held by provinces and territories. The supplies in the NES are regularly reviewed and replenished. Okay, so let me just translate that into English.
Yeah, let's translate that.
First, provinces.
Yes,
ask the provinces.
Ask the provinces. This is the province's responsibility.
And then we stockpile the stuff the provinces don't have. And then the third and final paragraph, we do not disclose details concerning medical countermeasures held by NES, including types and quantities due to security and confidentiality implications.
Can you imagine like an answer like that? Like, I'm sorry, this is where America kills us.
Oh, I know, but it's worse.
No American agency would get away with an answer like that.
I know, but
sorry, no,
it's worse. So provinces. We only hold the stuff that the provinces don't have. We're not going to tell you what we have. So I go to Ministry of Health Ontario, and I'm like, hey, what's the provincial stockpile for provinces, particularly my province? So first of all, they get right back to me like, who are you writing this for and what's your story about? And I write back, just answer my question. Like, I don't know if I'm going to write anything yet, but
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't work that way. I'm asking you a question to give me the answer here. You ready? You ready for the government of Ontario's full response?
Really? Okay, cause me pain. Do it.
Remember how the federal response was provinces?
Yep, good.
Yeah. Want to hear the province's response?
Oh yeah, I do. I already know. I already feel like I know what it's going to be, but lay it on me.
Here you go. The smallpox vaccine is part of the federal government's emergency stockpile. It is not used routinely in provincial immunization programs. Thanks. So the feds,
you need to take that answer back to the feds.
Well, I'm going to do it in the dispatch. I went to the feds. They went provinces. Sent me to the province. I tell the province, they go, we don't know. Let's talk to the feds. Feds won't tell me what's in it for security reasons. The Centers for Disease Control in the United States has a strategic smallpox stockpile sufficient to inoculate the entire population. Does Canada? Maybe. Do we have enough for 10,000?
And this is the thing that I think that people need to understand. In Canada, we cannot get basic answers to questions about how our government functions in ways that, and this is why, if you ever have an opportunity as a Canadian journalist to talk to an American law enforcement,
take the opportunity. They're better. You'll learn more.
And you can get anyone from the FBI on the phone. They'll be like, sure, we'll tell you all about that crime. No problem. Like, they're amazing. They're amazing. Or any sheriff's department. Hey, can you tell me about this? Yeah, happy to help. No problem.
Want the mugshot?
Blah, blah, blah. Go talk to the CDC. Sure, we'll give you all the. Do you need some tables? We can give you some tables. Here you go.
I've had Pentagon guys say, "Would you like photos?" Pentagon guys telling me, "Hey, sure, we'll answer that question. Here's a bunch of photos as well. Public domain. Use them. Thanks for your request." How you all doing up there in Canada? It's a completely.
It's amazing. It's I'm just every time I encounter an American, anybody, I'm just you're so beautiful. You're just a beautiful country. I just love you so much.
Land of the free, home of the brave.
Anybody from hey, can I talk to someone from the local municipal, whatever about the pothole situation?
No. Don't
ask. Give you a non-answer.
Plebe.
You please send your request in writing to this official third-party agency who will get back to you with a non-answer in a week. It's fucking awful.
Two paragraphs of boilerplate. 2 paragraphs of boilerplate before telling me they're not going to answer my question.
Jesus Christ.
So
okay, that's fine.
basically,
let's just shit on them. It's fine.
So, again, it is my expectation that monkeypox is not going to be a problem in Canada. Because the evidence thus far suggests this is an outbreak that is localized and probably involved direct contact between individuals.
But it strikes me as a legitimate question to ask what our smallpox vaccination situation is.
It is such
me as a very reasonable question too. Basic question for a journalist to ask.
I'm not asking for the battle plan. I'm not asking for contingencies. I'm saying how many doses of vaccine do we have? And they won't tell me. Okay. So that's going to be my main blurb.
And then Huawei. Do we want to talk about Huawei?
Well, you know what? I think we've talked long enough on the video. I am going to do a Huawei blurb, but to be honest, it's going to be an addendum blurb. It'll be a separate blurb, but it's going to be an addendum blurb to this one. And what I'm going to say is that, you know, the idea that the government of Canada basically just told me, trust us, right? Don't worry about it. We don't want to talk about it. It's classified. We spent 4 years thinking about whether we would do the blindingly obvious thing that, of course, we eventually in the end got around to doing, which was banning Huawei. So fuck you.
Why would we trust you?
I don't trust you. I'm sorry. Public health, absurd. Canada, you don't have the right to ask for me to take your word for it.
Nope.
And apparently I don't have the right to request specific information. So there's that. We'll have another blurb as well on.
Do we want to do something on airports? Do
you?
No, I mean, I was, to be honest with you, it was fine. I flew back from Pearson on a domestic flight, and it was not a big deal.
See, I flew a couple of months ago before. I mean, the last time I flew was almost, what day is it? Basically, almost exactly 2 months ago. I flew back to Toronto after vacation, and it was fine. We had no problems at all.
But I have heard that there are nightmare international.
Oh no,
like flying internationally at this point is an absolute goddamn shit show.
Well, we were flying from the U.S., but do we get routed to the international terminal, or are we like sent to the domestic terminal?
I don't know.
Neither do I.
I know that Pearson has an internal customs, U.S. customs agent, so maybe it was treated as a domestic flight.
Yeah, I honestly don't know, but we had no problems flying out at all.
Okay,
there were some lineups, but nothing that jumped out at us. So let's put a pin on that for now.
Let's put a
media dispatch here. Like this is
a media dispatch. Okay, so I mean, I'm not going to do a huge thing on Kenney though, because I mean, I've already kind of just done a 3,000 word behemoth on it.
I get the feeling as you sink your teeth into this, you're going to find it becoming longer than you expect.
That's been known to happen.
Yeah. So my main one will be, I don't trust you on monkeypox, you fucks. And then I'll do a Huawei addendum to that, which is, this is why I don't trust you on monkeypox, you fucks.
I don't trust you on monkeypox, you fucks should really just be your Twitter bio. That's great.
Like the entirety of it?
Like I don't trust you on monkeypox, you fucks. I just love that sentence. It's great.
It's a good sentence. Really rolls off the tongue, and it's so applicable to a lot of situations in life. We have another blurb coming in as well on divisions in NATO, not actual combat divisions, but like political fissures opening up on Ukraine. So that'll be good. I don't know. I mean, we're also heading into a long weekend, so we're going to take Monday off. I think we are sitting on a ton of content right now.
So much content.
Yeah, we had a lot of stuff to publish, but not a ton of it is that urgent to publish. So I think next week will be
we do have to do the one thing on S7. We got to do that next week.
Okay, well, we can do that Tuesday. We'll take Monday off. I'm writing my big metaverse think piece, and I'm also going to write on gun control soon. I think I told you at lunch about the gun control thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to write that. It's just, I don't trust you on monkeypox or gun control, you fucks.
I don't trust you on monkeypox or gun control, you fucks. I don't trust you on guns or monkeypox, you fucks.
At Matt Gurney. Click here for the website. Okay, that's all I got. Anything else?
That's it.
That was a fun dispatch video.
That was fun.
Podcast.
All right.
Okay, when do you want to put this out?
Probably tomorrow.
Want to do it tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
Oh, you have a thing tonight.
No, I have it. What thing do I have tonight?
You have a dinner, I thought. No,
I've got dinner tomorrow night. That got moved. But I do have Power and Politics in like half an hour.
So well, we already have NATO Ukraine. I'll do monkeypox, you fucks, and
I'll do Kenney.
Huawei
Something
right
on
now.
More on Kenney. So we'll be fine. I mean, we might be able to get it out tonight. It's just I fear that my dispatches will take a little while to get together tonight.
You know, to be honest with you, I'm gonna bet you, in fact, that you're gonna do it much faster than you think, and it's
I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna get all ragey.
No, you've been keyed up for a couple of days on this one. Also, can I throw you, just before we sign off, can I slightly throw you under a bus, but purely in affectionate and amusing terms?
What did I do now?
So you have written a series of columns about like come west, young man, right? Like flee Toronto,
run.
So we had lunch. You'd been in Toronto, what, like 11 hours?
Yeah.
you already had the Toronto strut going. You were dressed Toronto. You were talking Toronto. You were eyeballing their local real estate. Like
it is funny how subconsciously when I land in Toronto, I get my Toronto vibe, and then I come back to Alberta, and all of a sudden my voice gets a little more twangy, and I get a little more like, I don't fucking care. Like I don't do it consciously. It literally is just when I'm in the space. Like it's just I'm a chameleon, right? Like I just reflect it.
Yeah, you land back at Calgary Airport, and by the time you've gotten back to your horse tied up outside the airport, you're full Alberta mode again.
Full Alberta again. But like, you know.
But we had, like, you arrived, we had lunch the next day, and delicious lunch, by the way. I've been thinking about that ever since. It was really good.
Queen Mom's great, eh? Pink eye chicken, love that pink eye chicken.
I'd been there before, but for a party, I hadn't just had the whole menu in front of me.
The spring roll, I've never had spring rolls anywhere, including in Asia, better than the Queen Mom's.
The pad thai though was excellent. So
they're the best.
But you were all like, you had been in Toronto like 15 hours when we had lunch, and you were ready to move in. Like it was like you were just like, center of the universe, I'm back. And then like you kind of get back to Calgary and you're like, you got to shake your head and be like, what happened?
But you know, I know why also. It's because we've had an incredibly brutal, cold, slow spring. So everything like the trees outside my house are still not fully, like there's still not leaves on them. So I'm sitting here going like, I'm going to get a growing season of 4 months. And I'm really pissed off about it. And then I go back to Toronto and all of a sudden the phloxes and the trees are in bloom and everything is lush and fantastic. And I'm like, but the problem is that like I'm going to be back again out in July, and then I'm going to be like, oh, thank God I don't live in this shithole. This is the worst. And I'm going to come back to Alberta in my lake community where it's going to be a perfect sort of non-humid 30 degrees and everything is going to be glorious. And then I'll not regret it in the least. But you got me Toronto got me at a particularly weak moment. Mid-May is good in Toronto.
The next time you write one of your columns, like everybody should move to Calgary because Toronto sucks, I'm just going to remember you with your little strut walking down Queen Street as we went back to my car. And you're like, I was born to rule this town. If only for a few hours we had you.
For a few hours you had me, and I'll just remind you again that the Maple Leafs are a thing.
What do you mean? Oh yeah, they are. But I mean, hey, next season Stanley Cup. I'm planning the parade already. But
right.
You can't hurt me on this. Like I've been hurt so many times by the Maple Leafs that I can't be hurt anymore. And like this is fate.
So you think that's true, but I'm not sure that it's true.
I'm Job. Like it does. Like the Maple Leafs cannot fuck my life up enough for me to change my allegiance here. Now, for what it's worth, though, I do like your Flames. Battle of Alberta. I would be rooting for Calgary, but I have no problem once the Leafs are out of the playoffs shifting my affiliation to the Flames. I mean, I don't have any objection to the Oilers either, but it's kind of like the Flames have been my default when Toronto's out. I'll cheer for you, team. So go Flames. And next year it's all Leafs. So I believe go Leafs, go.
On that note, we'll let it go.
Okay. Bye-bye.